one of the inyanim that the Frierdiker Rebbe said about his Geula, he said that the way he was able to make it through this terrible ordeal was because Rosh Hashanah of that year, he mentioned, during saying the Maamar of Rosh Hashanah, he mentioned the Shita of the Baal Shem Tov in Hashgacha Pratis. That means to say that he mentioned something while he was saying the Maamar which didn't really have any connection. If you look now in the Maamar of Rosh Hashanah, Tafresh Pezan, you will not find that piece of the Maamar. Which means to say sometimes the Rebbeim say things while they're saying Maamarim, and not necessarily does it have a direct connection, because through saying, while saying a Maamar, through saying certain things, they're able to be poil inyanim l'mayla and l'mata. For going back to what we were speaking about before, Binyomin was speaking about before the Sirus Nefesh, which you can recall better than any of us, the Beis of Tavshin Yud Gimel, when there was the doctor's plot, and in Purim, Tavshin Yud Gimel, the Rebbe said a Maamar during the Farbrengen of Purim, and then they thought it was all over with. Usually there's one Maamar per Farbrengen, but then all of a sudden they saw the Rebbe becoming more serious, and he told over the story about the Chassid who was asked to vote for the next what was he voting for? The next king, not the king, what do you call it? The Tsar. The Tsar. Whatever, he was supposed to vote.
Oh, that was
Which wasn't he vote for the Tsar? Yeah. And he didn't know of anything. He was told to vote. The Rebbe said to vote, so he went to vote, and he puts on his garter to vote because the Rebbe said he was totally mufshit. And after they finished voting, everybody screamed hurrah. I think in English we say hooray, but when it seems in Russia they said hurrah. So everybody said hurrah 3 times, so he also said it. And the Rebbe was repeating this, and the Rebbe said 3 times, hurrah, hurrah. And everybody realized and joined in. And then the Rebbe suddenly started saying the Maamar, Al Kein Kol Layom Purim, Al Shem HaPur. And the Rebbe started explaining the whole inyan of Purim, and finished off with the words of the Maamar was that Mocha Emcha Zecha Molik. I'm going to finish off. I'm going to finish him off. Destroy the name of Amalek. And all of a sudden, back there in Russia, there was news that what's his name? Yimach Shemoy had a bit of an accident. He's not feeling too well. Then it was Niskala. He was really not feeling well. Then it was Niskala that he was Taka Ois.
Who?
Yeah, he really was gone immediately, but they had to do it in slow motion.
His guard was afraid to get into the room to check if he's dead.
What's that?
The guard was afraid to get into the room to check if he's still alive. He was so scared of him. Even the closest people, they were so scared.
He waited for it.
Psychopath.
Right. So that's how the Rebbeim did things with Maamarim. Which, by the way, they say a similar thing happened in, I think, in the Lammets. I don't remember which year in Lammets, and I don't remember who the president was at the time, but there was a certain president that wasn't very, shall we say, a great friend of Yidden, and had planned to make a drasha at a certain time, let's say 9 o'clock. He had planned to make a speech against Eretz Yisrael, against Yidden and Eretz Yisrael, and the speech was planned for a certain time, and the Rebbe decided that night, all of a sudden, he's going to make a Farbrengen. And you can actually hear it. I heard the tape once. You can hear that the Rebbe stops in the middle of the Nigun before the Maamar. The Rebbe doesn't let them finish. The Rebbe immediately starts saying the Maamar, because it seems it was on that exactly 9 o'clock, whatever it was, the time was, now the speech is, and that's when the Rebbe started saying the Maamar. And at the same time, in Washington, where the speech was supposed to be taking place, Zeh Umazeh, those days didn't have electric things, they only had papers. He comes to the podium, starts taking his papers, and it gets all mixed up. It's like totally mixed up. His whole drasha against Eretz Yisrael was nispar. He wasn't able to make the drasha. Meanwhile, in 770, the Rebbe was busy saying a Maamar. That's how the Rebbeim did things. There was recently printed up a fascinating story from the Frierdiker Rebbe, that, no, not, it was printed together with a Maamar from the Frierdiker Rebbe some weeks ago, some months ago, that there was a Maisa with the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe had a Chassid, I don't know his name, let's call him Rabbi Michoel. And Rabbi Michoel was a businessman, and he used to travel to Karlin for business. And the Alter Rebbe said to him, when you're in there, why don't you pop into the Rebbe over there, the Karliner Rebbe, I think it's I don't know who's who, pop into the Rebbe, the Karliner Rebbe, and tell me what you see. I want to hear some news. So he goes on his business trip, and when he arrives there, he hears that the Karliner is about to break. He's been fasting for 3 days. He's going to break his fast now, and all the Chassidim are gathered. He's going to say something. So the Chassid said, oh, this is what the Alter Rebbe wants. So he runs to the house, to wherever it was going to take place, and he watches. And the table was laid out with wonderful stuff, just like here. And there was also some sweet honey cake, lekker, on the table. And it was placed in front of the Rebbe. And as I said, it was a sweet piece of honey cake. He goes to make a mazonos, break his fast after so many days. He makes a mazonos, starts eating the cake. Then he makes a face. He says, something's wrong with the cake. It's bitter. How can honey cake be bitter? And he takes another piece. It's good. No good. Who baked this cake? There's only one baker in the house. It's his wife, the Rebbetzin. So he says, call her here. It's in front of everyone. The Chos is watching. He's making a fuss about cake. Never seen this with the Alter Rebbe making a fuss about a piece of honey cake. Anyway, so she comes walking in all worried. What's going on? And the Karliner says to her, what's going on with the cake? Why, it's bitter. She says, I tried my best. I put in the honey and it's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong. No, it's no good. And for such honey cake, for such baking, I think that. And he says the word divorce. And everybody's shocked over a piece of honey cake, which tastes good, and he's shouting at his wife in front of everyone. He thought it was some type of Purim spiel going on over here. And she gets very upset. She starts crying. All of a sudden, one of the Skanim, I don't know if it was related or not, or himself, I don't know who it was, comes over to the cake, takes a piece of cake, and he says, Rebbe, it's not as sweet as it should be. It's a little bit bitter, but that's not grounds for divorce. It's not that bad. It's okay. It's actually quite good. It's actually quite good. As soon as he said that, the Karliner's face lit up. He says, Hazai, it's good. And he starts singing and he's happy. This has gone from one extreme to the other. This Chos is watching, and this is some type of Purim spiel. I don't know what's going on. He was ashamed to repeat this to the Alter Rebbe, such a story. But when he comes back home after his business deal, he comes back home, and the Alter Rebbe calls him in. Uncle, what happened in Karlin? So he says, nothing much. Business is fine. He's trying to get out of it, but the Alter Rebbe is forcing him to say what happened. So finally, he says over. This is what happened, this is what I saw, what can I tell you? So the Alter Rebbe says, du verstehst nicht. You don't understand what was going on. He said, why do you think the Rebbe was fasting? The Karliner was fasting for 3 days. There was a gzeira against Yidden, that they're doing Torah mitzvahs, aber es ist truken, and es ist bitter. They're doing it because they have to, they're doing it out of, it's automatic, and they're not putting their heart and soul into it. And therefore it's bitter. And then because of this, there became a shtickle gzeira. So he's trying to mevatel the gzeira. And he was playing this gzeira out in front of everyone. Barabim, maybe this is the Asara Sheyeshrim. He's doing it in front of Barabim, and he calls in his wife. You have to understand that the husband and his wife represents the Eibishter and Yidden. The whole Sheyeshrim is based on that. Yidden are the wife, the Kala, and the Chadoidi Likras Kala, the Doidi is the Eibishter. So he calls in the Kala, he calls in his wife, and he says, it's bitter, it's no good. This is not the way it's supposed to be. So she gets all upset, and then somebody came along with Malachovsky. Somebody said, it's not exactly as sweet as it should be, but it's good. It's not grounds for divorce. In other words, it's not grounds for this terrible gzeira. And that's how he was mevatel. And that's afterwards he was so happy that somebody had the brains to be mevatel the gzeira. This chassid, it seems, was not stupid. So he says to the Alter Rebbe, he says, I understand now, and I understand that Kalina is a big Rebbe, but how comes we don't see these types of things going on over here? Don't see the Alter Rebbe shouting at the Rebbetzin about her honey cakes. So the Alter Rebbe's reply was, "Wir tun das durch Chassidus." We accomplish the same thing, but through Chassidus, through a Maamar. So that's what happened in Tafshin Gimel. The Rebbe says a Maamar and does away with what's his name, Rashma. Tafshin, whatever it is. Yeah. And then there was this other one with the president. These are the stories that we know about. We know Tafshin Gimel. It's a printed Maamar, and it's Marumas there in the Pesach Dava that it was connected with this what's his name? And then Machshema, yeah, I'm trying not to say his name. And then there was in the later of the Lamed, there was the president who was also saying Yisrael, and the Rebbe said a Maamar, and he got his papers mixed up. And now there, so we have no idea other things that the Rebbe does, and we don't know about it because there's no spiel over there, there's no honey cake going on. But the Rebbe is saying a Maamar, and he's doing things. This is what it says in Ayem Yom, that each Rebbe had a Maamar Letahes Ha'avi, to purify the air. Air conditioners, the Rebbeim have air conditioners. They say a Maamar, and the Letahes Ha'avi, the Mezakir Ha'avi. And sometimes they will repeat the same Maamar over and over again. In different places, they came to a certain place to say the Maamar. Maybe the Masu would be different, but the Teichel would be the same. The Rebbe Marash had one Maamar which we must repeat it at least 10-20 times. It's in different versions, but it's the same idea. And this way he was purifying the air. And this is the same thing, Benegea. So, Benegea in your name, Benegea to Yid Beis Tamuz, Yid Beis Gimel Tamuz, the Fidik Rebbe said, if he wouldn't have mentioned in the Maamar of Rosh Hashanah the Shitta of the Baal Shem Tov in Hashgacha Pratis, he doesn't know how he would have been able to make it through the whole ordeal. So he mentions in the Maamar about the Shitta of the Baal Shem Tov. So what we have to understand is what was this Shitta of the Baal Shem Tov that he mentioned in the Maamar? What is the Shitta of the Baal Shem Tov in Hashgacha Pratis? What is different? The Baal Shem Tov Shitta, Ma Nishtana, Shittas of Baal Shem Tov, Mikol HaShittas. What was Nischadish from the Baal Shem Tov?
At the itself. At the Gzera itself is.
Well, first of all, we know the Baal Shem Tov said, and also the Fidik of Maamar brings it down, that if, for example, you see a leaf blowing off from a tree, turning in the wind, and land somewhere, he says every part of that movement of the leaf is Negeya, is Bahashkacha Pratis. This is a Chiddush, because the Gedolei Yisrael beforehand also said everything is Hashgacha Pratis. But Ad Kedei Kach, which way the wind, what difference does it make if the leaf flows this way or that, anti-clockwise or clockwise? Make a difference. To us, it blows our minds. When we see a wind blow, we see all the grasses move in a certain direction because it makes a difference from this grass, that grass. There's billions and billions of blades of grass. What's the difference? So it blows our minds. We don't understand it. But the Baal Shem Tov said no. The fact that this tissue is over there blowing in the wind like that, that's Hashgacha Pratis. Especially if you learn the Alter Rebbe's Sha'ar Yichud Ve'emunah, you see that it's not just it's Hashgacha Pratis, he's watching over it. The Hashgacha Pratis is the highest of every detail. The fact that it's able to blow in the wind this direction is because the Chayes Elokei is making it and creating it right now in this direction and not that direction. Why? That's above our minds. Just by way of an example to show how everything is just given make it slightly more realistic. There's a famous story from the Rebbe Rashab that he once asked one of the Chassidim who were very close if he wants to come with him to a museum. He asked him to come with. And where did they go? They went to a museum. In the museum was paintings. Paintings were from famous artists, world-renowned artists. And on the wall was one with the paintings of a certain name. It says in the Sikha that the name of the artist was Raphael. Yeah, Raphael. So he was a world-famous artist, and the Rebbe Rashab is standing there with this chassid, and they're watching what's going on. there's a group of students come into the museum and they're being shown around. And the tourist guide is saying, look at this, look at that, and he's explaining what each one is and who wrote it, who drew it, who was the artist. They come to this famous painting, and the tourist says to the students, this is a world-renowned Raphael. It's a beautiful picture. You see, what do you see in the picture? You see a field, and you can tell in the picture the wind. You can't see wind, right? The wind is not visible, but you can see the wind. Why? Because look at all the grass facing in one direction, and there's a little bird perched on one of the stalks of corn, and it's a beautiful picture. Okay? Standing next to this group of students is a farmer who also decided to take a look in the museum. A simple farmer. And he's standing there, and he's looking also at the picture at the same time, and he's going like this. No good, no good. And the students are watching this farmer. He's going to say Venus, he's going to say Deus on this picture, and they're laughing away. He's busy going, no good, no good. And they're saying, anyway, so they decide, let's ask him. They've got this big smirk on their faces. Let's ask this farmer, what is the problem with the picture? So they go to him and said, excuse me, sir, we see you complaining the picture is not good enough. Well, what's wrong with the picture? You don't like it? He says, it's actually a very nice picture, but it's not MS. It's not true. Not true? Another peal of laughter. What do you mean it's not true? This is, who this is Raphael, this is the one of Look at that, beautiful. You can even see the wind blowing. And they're all laughing away. And he says, no, but it's not true. Why isn't it true? What's wrong with it? He says, you see that little bird over there sitting on that stalk? He says, that bird is a very small bird and a very light bird. So it doesn't have too much weight. But it still has some weight to it. It's not a leaf, it's a bird. And it's sitting on that stalk, and that stalk naturally would have to bend ever so slightly. And Raphael has made it the same position as all the other stalks. It's not Emes. All of a sudden, the smiles on the faces of all these students suddenly disappears. And Rebbe Rashab went there specially to see this. He said, here you see that this Ish Pasha, this is only a farmer, the Anoshim Pshutim have such chushim sometimes, which even the big Chachamim don't have. The big Chachamim think they know it all, but the simple person, he has a certain edelkeit that he was able to chap this where the others couldn't. Now, what can you see from this story is that the slightest detail makes it either emes or not emes. What are we talking about? We're talking about a few millimeters of a bend on a stalk of wheat or grass, whatever it was. A few millimeters makes the difference. So now we can understand, even in our heads, how those 3 millimeters makes a difference. Either it's a true picture or it's not a true picture. That's just a marshal to understand that if we were the master paintings of Olam Hazeh and all the Olamas, we would understand why the leaf has to go this way and not that way. We don't understand it because we're finite people. Obviously we don't understand. But if we would know the master plan, we would know the painter's idea, we'd understand that it makes a major difference if it goes this way or that way, and by Hashgacha Pratis it has to go this way and not that way. That's Hashgacha Pratis. And this the Baal Shem Tov says about every single thing in the world, whether it's Semeach, whether it's Chai, Semeach and Doimim, Allah has come v'kam medaber. That if it's whatever happens to the person, is Bashkacha Pratis every single detail. Says the Frierdiker Rebbe, when I said the Maamar on Rosh Hashanah, I mentioned this shitta of the Baal Shem Tov that helped me through the Ma'aseh Geula. How did it help him? And if it wouldn't be the shittas of Baal Shem Tov, it would also be everything's Hashgacha Pratis. What was it necessary to have the knowledge of the shittas of Baal Shem Tov to help him through the situation, what happened with Beis Tamuz? There's a whole arichas dikasicha from the Rebbe on this, explaining why, but it boils down to this: that when the Frierdiker Rebbe went on Mesiras Nefesh, he was not looking to become a Baal Mesiras Nefesh. It's the same Nakuda that the Rebbe brings down in the very first Maamar, the difference between the Mesiras Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva and Mesiras Nefesh of Avraham Avinu. Rabbi Akiva, when he was being in the middle of being tortured to death, he had a smile on his face. And his Talmidim said to him, what are you so happy about? Isn't this painful? He didn't say it's not painful, but he said, all my life, I'm waiting all my life to be able to come to this ability to be Meisa Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, and finally I'm reaching this. Shouldn't I be happy? That was Rabbi Akiva. It's a madrega, it's a very high madrega to look for Mesiras Nefesh. If I'm not mistaken, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Frierdiker Rebbe said to Chassidim during the hard times, he said, Chap tarai Mesiras Nefesh. It was a situation that you're going to go Mesiras Nefesh. Some people didn't make it back. Some people lost their lives. The mile of Mesiras Nefesh is such a mile she'ein kamoyu. It's impossible to measure such a mile. And Rabbi Akiva wanted this mile, and therefore when he finally was coming to it, he was happy. But there's higher than that. What's the level higher than that? Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was not looking for Mesiras Nefesh. If he has to go Mesiras Nefesh, he's ready for it, but that's not what he was looking for. He wasn't looking for his own Maila, even a Maila Ruchnis. He was looking to do whatever the Eibishter wants. And what was his shlichus in the world? To be mefarsim elokus. Everybody should come to the realization, Einoi Mulvadei, Hashem Echad, and none of this of serving Avodah Zarah, etc. So that was his shlichus, and that's all he was doing, and that was his kavanah. So if Mesiras Nefesh is necessary, he'll go Mesiras Nefesh, but he wasn't looking for Mesiras Nefesh, he was looking to be mefarsim elokus. And therefore, when he was jailed or prevented from doing this shlichus, he was upset. He wasn't happy, I'm going to Mesiras Nefesh, what could be higher than that? He wasn't looking for that. He was looking to fulfill whatever the Eibishter wants. If now it requires Mesiras Nefesh to do that, but it bothered him that he was not able to be mefarsim Hashem Echad to the world. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was the same thing. When he was in jail, he was upset. Why? Because during that time, it's making a chalishus in Avodas Hashem. It's a chalishus in the shlichus to be mefarsim elokus, to say Maamar, which by the way, even in jail he said, Maamar, this is the one we just did this from a year later, but there's one in jail he wrote down. He did in jail. And Availi Ba'ezri, these are things that the person in jail has time. I'm not talking about a nice comfortable jail like the American ones. I'm talking about Binyomin can give us a bit of an understanding of what these things are. This wasn't a very comfortable place, to put it mildly. And yet he's writing Maimorim, and his mind is in other places. So what was upsetting him? That he's not able to be mefarsim elokus, Chassidus, Yahadus, whatever it is. But since he'd said in the Maamar of Rosh Hashanah, the Shita of the Baal Shem Tov, that every single detail is b'hashgacha pratis, that gave him the strength that even though he's not able to fulfill his shlichus at this moment, but this also is hashgacha pratis. Even while things are being blocked, there's something going on which you don't understand, or maybe he understood it. There's something going on that is high, which we don't understand. That's good. Something has got sort of the shit of gamzul tov. Even this, which is not tov, b'teva nirav anigla. We're not talking about gashmis. Gashmis it definitely wasn't good. We're talking about it wasn't good beruchnius. There was a sakona. We have no idea what sakona the Frierdiker Rebbe was in. I'm sure people know that when the Frierdiker Rebbe was going down the hallway, he made a wrong turn. They're aware of that. The Frierdiker Rebbe was sent down the hallway to a certain room, and he made a wrong turn by a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake, obviously it was hashgacha pratis, but had he made the turn that he was supposed to make, there wouldn't be a Beis Tamuz left. And by mistake he went the other direction, and that's it, because they'd planned something over there down that hallway, and he didn't go there, he ended up a different place. There was sakonas from every side, and not only that, even when he was told that he's free, he asked, on Gimel Tamuz, I mean, it's just before, a few days before Gimel Tamuz, he's told, tomorrow you're going to be free, you can go home, but you have to take a train, you can be in your home for 6 hours, and then you have to go to Kastamar, you have to go on the train. So the Frierdiker Rebbe asked him, which day am I going to arrive? He said, Shabbos. He says, okay, I'm not going. Because he knew that they were trying to look for a way that they should have him doing something on Shabbos. So he said, no, so to stay in jail, the chol hadayis was sakonas nefashos. And nevertheless, he said, no, I'm staying. That's it, staying. He stayed in jail with the sakonas, knowing that the people there with guns could do anything. He's staying there, and then he at Iskafit, he went to Kostroma, and while he was on the way, there was already the famous chassid that was already building a cheder over there. He was already doing things as the Fidikim. In other words, not only didn't stop, it continued even more. It continued to, probably even more. But during the time that he was restricted, he had to. You remember the Shittas of Baal Shem Tov, that this itself is Ashgacha Pratis. Even the fact, the Rebbe says actually in the Sikh over there that a similar thing happened by the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab also, in his times, as we know, started the Gzeirus of it wasn't started, it was continued, the Gzeirus of the Haskalah movement. They wanted to, you mentioned before the Chinuch, there's an interesting thing that's going on now. It seems to me it never stopped from back then. It just has different forms of the infiltration of the Haskalah movement, or the, how should we say, liberal movements, and all these movements that are trying to infiltrate the chinuch of children. It shouldn't be a pure chinuch. So now then it was the Russians, and now it's in America. In the name of democracy, they're trying to cheper the chinuch of kids. Is the Rebbe Rashab was by an asifa. All the Rabbanim were called to this meeting, about Daily Yisrael, and one of the Daily Yisrael that was called to this asifa was the Reb Chaim Brisker, who was close with the Rebbe Rashab. And they went to this asifa, and the government is saying we've got to change things, and the teachers have to start teaching this and teaching that, obviously to take out the Taras HaKodesh from the Chinuch. And the Rebbe Rashab got up and made a drosha and spoke against the government and said this is wrong, and he started putting a fight up. What he couldn't even put a fight with his hands, with his speech. It was a very powerful speech. And he was so overwhelmed in speaking with such fervor that he actually fainted. But they put him under house arrest, so he's being locked up in somewhere, wherever it was. Afterwards, when they let him free, they said he went back to his hotel, and Reb Chaim Brisker went along with him to his room, and he sees that the Rebbe Rashab is crying. So he says to the Rebbe Rashab, he says, "The Babich Rebbe, midach keton alsvus mikem. We've done everything we could. What else could we do? We've tried our best. If there's a gzera, there's a gzera. But we tried our best." And the Rebbe Rashab's reply was, "Yeah, aber der Inyan hat sich nicht abgetan." The Inyan, we didn't accomplish. What's the difference what we did or we didn't do? This is Rabbi Akiva and Avram, the same thing. We did our best. Yeah, we had a serious effort, yes, but you didn't accomplish what we were looking to accomplish. That the gzera should disappear, and that's what's bothering the Rebbe Rashab. Therefore, he was upset with that itself. And the only way to continue is, by the Fidik Rebbe, is to remember everything's Ashgacha Pratis, and I think this is negay to every single person, Ashgacha Pratis. It's negay to every single person. Every person in his own life and his own inyanim has sometimes things which are not the way we would like. And we can sometimes get upset about it. The Eibusher should rearrange his world. The famous thought with they say the Baditsheva, the Hilike Baditsheva once said, if I would be up there, I would do things differently. I would arrange this, that this guy should have panos, and this guy should have this, and this guy. Everybody should have what they need. Because the Baditsheva was Oiv Yisrael Lahafli. And the Alter Rebbe replied, but if I would be up there, I would do it exactly the way it is now. In other words, when you're up there, you know the master plan, you know the artist's plan, you know every single detail, then you understand why it's like this. So to us, we sometimes see things that it doesn't seem to fit to the plan. You have to know that the Shittas of Hashem is Ashgacha Pratis, that every single detail, the minutest detail is by Ashgacha Pratis. Does that mean that things cannot get better? Of course they can. But for that you have to daven, for that you have to have bitachon, tachlit, v'zayin. But we always have to remember that everything is b'diuk the way it is in the Kavanah again. Anyway, Chaim.
Chaim. Oh yada yada did da lai ho yada ya 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 wa ya yada yada da 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 ya da da lai ha yada hi hi